Right, well, welcome to Building a Resilient Supply Chain, Technology, Trends and Tactics. This is an informative webinar hosted by Logiq Group in partnership with Netstock. I'm Jeff Prestige, a Director at Logiq Group, and I'm your host for this morning. I am excited to introduce our guest speaker, Netstock Channel Relationships Manager, Carrie Schur. Carrie has over 20 years experience in the supply chain industry. She is passionate about helping businesses, particularly those in distress, with delivering change management, optimizing inventory in the supply chain, and business restructuring. She hails from Rose Bay in the New South Wales and will be sharing some of her experiences with us this morning. I'm really looking forward to learning more about what it means to build a resilient supply chain. In preparing for this webinar, I did some research on what the key components of a resilient supply chain are. The number one thing that seemed to come up a lot, which is probably common sense for most on the call, was diversification of suppliers. Relying on a single supplier can lead to significant risk if that supplier faces disruptions. I was having a chat about this with a business owner yesterday who does a lot of importing from China, and I asked what they did to mitigate the risk. What he said was interesting. He said that while their primary suppliers are based in China, they have developed relationships with other suppliers in the likes of Vietnam, Taiwan, and India, and they can turn them on at very short notice. He shared an example where recently, when the US introduced large tariffs on imports from China, where within 40 days of the tariffs going on, one of their key suppliers in China had a new plant commissioned and operational in Vietnam, and they were already exporting from there. So this highlights the need of having a contingency plan and being able to move quickly. A second point that I came up with in my research was having good visibility and real-time data on supply chain activities, including inventory levels, transportation, and supplier status. This enables faster and more informed decision-making. I'm sure that this is a topic which Carrie will touch on today in her presentation, including the importance of investing in technology solutions to provide us with this data. This webinar is live, and we will be having some Q&A at the end, so if you think of questions as we go, please pop these into the Q&A panel on the Teams meeting. Now, without further ado, I'll hand over to Carrie. Welcome, Carrie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you so much for everyone today for joining us during the session. So as Jeff was speaking about earlier, my name is Carrie Schur. I always say for my sins, I come from the supply chain consulting and corporate background. So I've had 20 plus years experience with working with different entities. I've been, once again, very privileged to work across multiple different industries. And whenever I speak to new clients, they always come to me and say, either we are at a point that we know we need to be optimized, or we are at a point of distress, or we are at a point of a growth, hopefully, trajectory. And there's very similar frameworks that I'll always speak to. And when we talk about resilience, I don't use that word as a buzzword of the moment, or you'll also hear a lot of people speaking about an agile environment. Because I've really been in the trenches and I understand what it's like to, have cash flow concerns, as Jeff spoke to perfectly, the need for a diverse supplier set. How do we really understand what our suppliers' performance levels are like? What are the forecasting concerns we have? Just general transparency of data. I always say to have a really solid platform in place is at least the foundation to optimization. And because whenever we look at any client's balance sheet, let's be very frank and say the two main costs are either property, equipment, and so forth, or inventory. So whenever we look at very quick wins, the physicality around changing your supply chain can be very costly. But when we look at inventory, that's where you're going to be able to get the most return of investment, because you're going to increase fill rates, you're going to hopefully reduce excess stock, and you're just going to have, as I said, more transparency, so that when we start building maybe an inbound change or a physical warehouse change, or end-to-end physical distribution change, you've at least got the correct inventory in the right place to be able to support that. So as we spoke to earlier, we want to build a resilient supply chain. We want to make sure that whatever changes there are within the supply chain parameters, we are able to adjust very quickly. And I think a lot of clients learned that during COVID. Those that were able to adjust survived, and those that weren't, unfortunately, were not in the same position. So today I want to speak to you about risk management and that approach to inventory, technology, and of course, the ability to model alternative optimization solutions. And that's the key here as well, is how do we give you a platform that if there are changes in suppliers, if there are changes in your market, for example, often a competitor exits the market, enters the market, you've got new product ranges coming in, you've got all this big data available to you. How do we address the need to very quickly have the analytics to understand the status quo and, of course, move on that change? So whether that's going to impact an order or whether that's going to impact a receipt, we've got to give you a platform, as I said, that's really going to be incredibly agile so that you can model those different parameters. So whenever I speak about agility in a best class inventory planning environment, as I said, been in the industry for a while. I actually represent Netstock. I'm the channel manager for them, but I met them many, many years ago when they were in the infancy stage, and they were always revolutionary in their thought process. And that's why I developed such a phenomenal rapport with them, is because they were one of the very first cloud-based solutions. At that point in time, most people were working with, physical hardware. If there were new versions that came out, or the integration concerns and costs around that. So we want to make sure that whatever platform you're working on is, as I said again, very agile, cloud-based. Now there's so many cloud-based opportunities available to you. I'm going to talk to you today also about some basic fundamentals around making sure that you've got a best-in-class solution. And that best-in-class doesn't need to be daunting. It really doesn't. Netstock and a lot of other platforms do have really solid forecasting algorithms available to you. Now, obviously, Netstock, because we've been around for so long, we've got about just under 3,000 clients globally. We work with different industries. We've got 400 years of supply chain experience throughout the Netstock realm. We obviously, I'm speaking to you today representing the APAC environment, but we understand supply chain, we understand forecasting irregularities. So you want to make sure that your forecast, which isn't an exact science, and I've as I said, been around there for a while. So you want to try and use analytics, and you want to try and use algorithms that are out there so that you can understand trends. To have a huge amount of data there, and you now manually trying to understand, well, last year, February, we had a peak, but the February before we had a dip. So what do we do here? We're going to have automated best fit algorithms that look at your previous data points and are able to statistically find what would be the best algorithm that would have predicted previous trends. And as I said, this doesn't have to be complex. Netstock will do this for you per SKU, per location. And that's a way that we're able to get a forecast risk that's much lower. So we also talk about transparency of data. We've got one source of truth now. I'm sure a few of you, if you're not working off a demand planning system, with the technology available, you're probably working with massive amounts of different tabs within spreadsheets. I've seen some very sophisticated Excel spreadsheets, but still you're working with data that isn't refreshed daily. You're working with possible, I don't want to use the word corrupted, but I've seen a lot of data that does get corrupted because Excel, because formulas were put in many years ago and people don't understand that. So we want to make sure that whatever platform you're using, you're getting data directly from your ERP that's refreshed every single evening. We want to make sure it's easy to use. Systems don't need to be difficult. They really don't. And we at Netstock pride ourselves on making sure that your onboarding is seamless. We give you daily, weekly, monthly processes to follow. So it has to be easy. Another key here is understanding the risk factors. So we all know that forecasts are not an exact science, but you want to measure how well you're forecasting. You also want to understand how well your supply is doing. How often do they deliver on time and full? What does their OTIF look like? What does their DIFOT look like? Delivered in full on time. We want to have, you've got the data, you might as well be measuring this. And this truly is the IP that sits within our system, is we're going to build profiles around inventory for you. Because let's be honest, whenever I walk through a warehouse, I always do I know it seems very old school, but it really does give me insight into how well the company is working. I walk through a facility and I do a dust test with my finger, and you have no idea how much inventory sits on shelf for so long. And when I talk about the cost of holding inventory, I'm talking about space, I'm talking about possible provisions for redundancy, provisions for theft, for breakages, your actual tangible costs around counting that stock, your working capital tied up in that stock. Your inventory should be seen as piles of cash sitting on a rack. So when you want to invest in safety stock and buffer stock, it should be investing in areas where there's risk. We also want to make sure that we give you a platform that you're able to identify what SKUs are actually giving your business the most value. And you'd be surprised how few people do this on a regular basis just because it's so cumbersome. So we're going to give you a nice Pareto of these products contribute the most towards your cost of sales or your margin or your selling, your overall selling price. And these products might contribute the most towards your movements so that you can make decisions based on full rates. It's fine to have a really high expectation to have availability rates for products that are going to be beneficial for your business. And of course, we want to also provide you, as we said, with scenario modeling. Now, we're going to talk a little bit now about forecasting. Now, please don't hesitate to ask whatever questions you have. If you're facing concerns in your business, please let me know, because we at Netstock and myself have been very fortunate to see things that have gone right, things that have gone wrong, and what are the mitigations around that. But I stress again how important it is, even though forecasting is, as I said, that crystal ball, not an exact science, but you can get to a point that I think we can forecast using the correct algorithms to a good 70% accuracy rate. And to be able to do that, you're going to need a measurement tool. You can't do this manually. It's just very cumbersome, even if you do have the data point in place. So we need to make sure that we provide you, as I said, with the best fit algorithms. Sorry, just excuse me, I've got my big screen to the right, so if you do see me casting my eye towards that, that's what I'm doing. Another critical point here, which a lot of people fall short on, is the collaborative approach. So as I said, if you've got a system in place that could provide you with algorithms that can help with 70% of that forecasting accuracy, and it's automated. You literally don't do anything. You push a button. The data feed happens every night, and we're able to understand peaks and dips. Seasonality gets brought into all of our algorithms. We look at historic movements as well to judge, has there been a growth in this particular product? Is there a decline? But another critical aspect is the ability for your product teams to sit down now with I call it a baseline. So your demand teams will say, this is what our algorithms are saying we're going to look like over the next couple of months. You now can sit with sales and say, look what we're predicting. Does this match your budget? So that you're not constantly reacting to, oh my goodness, we stocked out, or we've got excess stock. You're having these collaborative discussions based on unemotional information. And I've walked into so many clients where marketing is against finance, is against demand planning, and everyone's running in different directions, and warehousing sitting there going, oh my goodness, I have no idea what's going on because no one's, really giving me insight into doing this. And there is so much available in your data that you can now mitigate this concern, and you can work together. we've got to understand that stockouts do come into play. So just because you didn't have stock doesn't mean that that should affect your future forecast. Another critical, unfortunate mistake that a lot of companies make is they'll say, oh, we sold 10 the month before, we sold 10 last month, we're on track to sell 10. In the meantime, you've actually been stocked out for 30% of those months. So if you're going to be projecting 10 going forward, there's going to be huge concerns as to a continuous stock out scenario. And a lot of our clients are losing hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars because they're not tracking this. So software will, without a doubt, provide you with insights into what you should be forecasting considering your lost sales. We also want to look at different promotions. So, of course, a lot of our customers are in the retail environment, they're in the production environment where there's major, as I said, spikes and dips during certain periods, and we are able to overlay all of that, including financial budgets on top of it. And we want to be able to adjust at a micro and macro level. So I don't want to get too operational during these discussions. Please, I'm happy to have calls with individual people as a subsect to this webinar. But if a new competitor enters the market and you've seen that or you're hearing that and you want to quickly react, you want to be able to go into a system that you can say, okay, this specific category of goods is going to decline by 20% over the next 6 months. And a system has to allow you to do that. To do that manually is very difficult. You want to be able to have that, as I said, at a macro view, make adjustments so that that automatically rolls down to whatever your suggested orders are. So now that we've spoken about forecasting, what I want to do is I want to move into risk measurements and, as I said, safety stock. And then I want to actually show you our platform so that you can actually see these principles working. So we spoke about we need to make sure that supplier delivery is key, and we need to make sure that we are at least understanding what that does to our safety stock, and the same thing with forecasts. Now, I did speak earlier to a point that we call safety stock or buffer stock just in case stock, just in case your supplier doesn't deliver on time, just in case you supersede a forecast. So that is cash tied up in just in case. Now, I always say to people, think logically. Do you want money sitting around in product that adds very little value to your business? Absolutely not. Do we want to rather utilize those funds and optimize those funds with products that are quite risky? So we can't really predict a forecast. Our suppliers are a bit erratic. As Jeff said, we've got one source of supply. We can't really go elsewhere. But at least it does give us a really good margin when we do sell. So yes, in those cases, that's where we want to keep our cash. So what our system will do is it will actually go back and look at how often every single order was delivered, not on time, not in full, and it will build up those profiles to understand how much safety stock you need. So what I'm going to do now is I want to take everyone into the Netstock instance, because I think the power of technology truly is the visuals, and to understand what that technology is doing from an output perspective. So just let me know if, Jeff, if you could just give me the thumbs up if you can see our Netstock instance. Okay, fantastic. So we
can
spoke
see
earlier.
a desktop, but not Netstock, sorry.
Okay, so let's just, apologies for that. Let's just do another screen share.
Yeah.
How is that? Okay, so we spoke about a cloud-based instance. So what we want to be able to provide you with, or what I always call an agile supply chain looks like, is what is my position right now? If there are changes, can I adapt? And can I save time? And can I save money? And that's really the premise of any solid platform. So what our system will do is it will provide you with the following. It's going to show you, I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly of your inventory. So how much stock holding are you actually housing right now? So we've got 8.7 million. But what is our model stock? And due to all of our algorithms, and as I said, all those nice risk factors, we're looking at your data every single evening. We're looking at your bill of materials. So we understand what your demand is for your finished goods, and we're going to make suggestions as to the ordering or supply or perhaps redistribution of your raw materials. So we're very, very strong in the manufacturing realm as well. So we will build your model stock profile, your ideal stock or your utopia. We'll be able to provide you also with what is your excess amount. We want to always be proactive. So many people get stuck in the rut of, oh, I need to deal with excess. In the meantime, you've got a whole lot of surplus orders in place, but you don't know how to measure that. And that's going to be free cash. Because if you can cancel an order, and we have the ability to be able to see, is it on a ship? Is it on a plane? Or let's just say, is it en route, so that you're not spending unnecessary time trying to see, well, can we cancel an order that's just already physically been moved? What is your fill rate? So a lot of companies don't measure fill rate, and it's critical that you understand fill rate, because that's going to give you the competitive advantage at the end of the day. And for those that say, Carrie, we want 100% fill rate, I'm going to say to you, well, we can always do that. And once again, we spoke about an agile demand planning system, and demand planning, remember we said, is the foundation to securing a good supply chain, because if you don't have the right product in the right place, no matter how fantastic your warehousing is, no matter how brilliant your inbound is, it's not going to do anything because you don't have the correct inventory to satisfy demand. So fill rate is key, because to keep 100% fill rate is going to cost you a ridiculous amount of cash, and that's fine, but you've got to be able to have the ability to make decisions to keep 100% fill rate potentially in segments that add the most value. To keep 100% fill rate across the board is going to be difficult. It also shows you what value of stock is in stock out, potential stock out, and it's going to also give you your stock turns. Now, as I said, today isn't a Netstock demo. It's just to show you principles around transparency of data. So you want to be able to log into any platform and see, oh, today I'm in a good position. I've got concerns. What are my quick wins? So we at Netstock are very much about, we know time is nigh. We know your resource is limited. So we've got excess stock, but what can we actually do quickly that will add the most benefit? So we call it the top 5. What are your top 5 units in excess? What are your top 5 units in surplus? But of course, you can drill down. Another thing that I want to show you today is the ability to see movement over time. So we want to be able to very quickly understand what was our demand, and please excuse the system, this is a sandpit, just a dummy version, but you want to be able to have a look at last year or 2 years ago in September, I saw 25, what does my future forecast look like? And it's got to be at your fingertips. If you don't have this within a second without having to go to Excel spreadsheets or having to go to an ERP system, it just saves so much unnecessary time. So it's all about having one platform to answer your questions. And remember, we spoke about forecasting methodologies. So generally speaking, within the forecasting realm, you should have about, I think there's about 25, 26 general forecasting methodologies that have been devised by certain mathematicians. And you want to know what is the best fit methodology. So many clients just rely on a 3-month moving average, or maybe they'll look at an exponential smoothing. But generally speaking, most people look 3-6-month averages. And then I always say it breaks my heart, because the technology is out there to say, look in the past. Look at what your demand is doing over time. Over the last 5 years, this is the yearly value. You can see there's so much, there's been decent growth, but all of a sudden the system has found that over the course of the last couple of months, there's actually been a fairly large decline, for instance. So you need to be able to pick up those trends. In addition to that, you need to be able to make decisions as to, oh, hold on, I'm 35% of the way through the forecast, but I'm only 25% of the way through the month. So I might be in a position where I need to look at increasing numbers. So you can see how beautiful a really nice visual system is to make very quick decisions. Now, we're going to speak a little bit as to classification. Now, moving quite quickly, as I said, any questions, please let me know. But I'm very passionate about making sure you understand what your inventory looks like. So right now, I can see very quickly that this is my total stock value. We break it down into A's, B's, and C's, L, M, and H, but we don't need to go into the specifics. Just know, and if you do want to get in touch with me, I can explain the more granular level detail. But what green box means is that this is great stock. It adds towards your bottom line. So it's a high contributor to margin or cost of sales, and it moves really quickly. So you can make very quick decisions into green items which are healthy. Blue items are medium contributors towards your overall cost of sales or margin. So they're average items. Red, problem. Very little contribution towards bottom line, very little contribution towards movement. So there's always a concern here. Gold are outliers, either very expensive and very slow moving or very cheap and very high moving. Now imagine how fantastic it will be when we talk about an agile supply chain that we need to make decisions. We need to fill containers. Are you going to start filling containers with expensive, slow moving goods? Absolutely not. Are you going to start filling containers with medium moving goods? Not. So many people fill containers and they'll go, okay, quickly, let me just guesstimate what I think is going to work. But imagine the ability to very quickly look forward and say, I'm going to fill a container with cheap, fast moving goods. Beautiful. I'm going to have a stocking policy around cheap, fast moving goods. I'm not going to order cheap, fast moving goods every month. Let me have the ability to order these every 6 months. So it's really beautiful that we've got this Pareto available. So if we want to now have a look at what does our excess stock look like, I've yet to ever walk in to any company that doesn't have excess stock. But imagine being able to understand that, oh, hold on, most of our excess stock is actually sitting in bad product. So let's have very quick excess reduction plans in place for these products. And if you want to see these products, you can just click in. You're not going through millions of spreadsheets to be able to make these decisions. And it's exactly the same thing with what are we stocked out of today? Oh my goodness, this is a problem. We're stocked out of some of our fastest moving, highest contributing goods. Do we really get concerned about slow moving goods? Not really. Now, we're going to speak a little bit more strategically around what's going on in the supply chain. It's chaos. I can say that I have seen some very interesting scenarios when I look back around 2008 with the financial crisis and volcanoes in Europe and manufacturing plants in China shutting down and shipping companies, because of the financial mayhem at the time was, you just couldn't physically get containers out. There were strikes globally. And if you didn't have platforms like this in place, then it made life near impossible to be able to be reactionary, to say, okay, well, these products I'm stocked out of. Let's look at local supplies very quickly for these products. Let's understand that there's at least decent margins in this, so I can look at maybe playing a little bit with my cost of sales pricing. Now, as I said, that situation in 2008 was crazy. What's happening now in the industry is even more difficult. We've got AI that's come out. There's so much data available. We've got chaos in the Middle East. We've got uncertainty just in global markets because of American elections. We at Netstock performed a really interesting KPI benchmark. I don't know if anyone actually saw our KPI benchmark report. If you haven't, please go onto the Netstock website and download it. It's fantastic from an insight perspective, because we interviewed about 2,500 customers globally, and we wanted to understand what are their general lead times, what are their general concerns, what is the AI aspect of their business. And what we found is that within the Australian realm, we have, and it was to be expected, I didn't realize it was going to be quite as extreme, but we've got the longest lead times in the world. I still was under the impression that probably within Africa and Middle East would be longer, but it's not the case. We have the longest lead times in the world. And we've got the most to lose if you don't have an agile, flexible supply chain, because With a long lead time, it means you've got to be more reactionary. You've got to have more stock tied up um, in safety stock. You've got to understand your forecast risk at a higher level, because we can't be, we don't have the ability to go down the road like Europe and say, okay, well, now I'm sitting in Austria, let me see, what's available everywhere around me. We don't have that. So it was one takeaway that did give me a little bit of a fright when I looked at that benchmark report about how difficult our planning process is relative to the rest of the world. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take us back very quickly into our presentation. Sorry, I wanted to show you the actual Netstock system, just how beautiful those visuals were, how agile that system is, so that I don't just speak to topics, I can actually show you possible solutions. Okay. Sorry, I don't know why this. Okay, so we spoke about the risk measurement. We've spoken about the item classification. And what I also like doing with this item classification is understanding that certain products add a certain portion to demand. So I want to know what products are giving me the most from a demand perspective, and I want to target the highest fill rates in those realms. I also want to chat to you about performance monitoring. And I did show you those dashboards earlier where it was what is your actual stock versus your model stock, what's your fill rate, what's your potential stock outs and stock outs. And as I said, we pull through information every single evening, and we're able to have products that might be today okay, tomorrow it moves into excess, and all this information is readily available and can be downloaded. So why, for me as a consultant, it's so absolutely critical to have this information live is I've worked with clients that they've got these amazing dashboards, but it's based on information that happened last week. So how on earth are you going to be able to be reactive or proactive, excuse me, instead of reactive to changes in supply if you're working on data that's a week old? And I love the story because it's happened a few times where I've walked into MD's offices and they're sitting there and I said to them, what is the majority of your time spent on? And they say to me, reviewing orders. And it really does make tears want to roll down my face because they should not be doing that. They really should, as a managing director or a GM of a company or a CEO, you should be able to have a really nice platform that you can click into and get whatever you need. And you know that information is valid information. You should not be placing orders. So we want to make sure that we give you a platform that you, of course, can hit a button, and that's what Netstock will do. So it will present you with the ideal order based on really solid forecasting algorithms based on those safety stock calculations I spoke to. We've also spoken about the desperate need to have the flexibility in those risk profiles. And at the end of the day, you should just be reviewing exceptions. And that is the key to really, when I talk about automation in a supply chain, it's about freeing up your time to be able to just look at exceptions and have everything else run itself. And you'd be surprised how many people say that they can do that, but they physically cannot do so. We have spoken about the need for an understanding of lost sales. And once again, that component is not to be understated. If you don't understand what you're losing, you're not going to be able to understand what you need to have to be able to be in a situation to avoid that. And a system should be able to provide you with all that information. Now, this is another principle that I can speak at length about, but I won't, don't worry, is a lot of the time people don't have concrete information to be able to forecast ahead of time and understand what's happening in your supply chain ahead of time. And now I'm using the word supply chain. I'm not just using the word demand or supply planning. So what a system should be able to do, and of course we at Netstock can do this, is literally a click of a button, we would be able to provide you with an overarching, so you can see this across your business in full. You can have a look. We've got the ability to filter. So if you want to look at a certain supplier or a certain segment of product, or if you do want to look at customer, and we've got that as a field in your ERP data, because remember, everything we're pulling directly out of the ERP. There's no concern around, oh well, someone's tampered with numbers, or this is it. I always say it's the one source of truth. So we're able to have a look. Today I'm sitting at 8.7 million. Ahead 12 months, I might be sitting at 7 million. So tangibly, we can now see what our stock holding will look like if we just let the system run. Now, of course, we all understand markets change and the shifts, and because we have a nice working environment, this will change over time based on demand changes. But you can very quickly see stock holding, closing stock in 12 months' time is going to look like this. Our fill rate over 12 months is increasing from 87% to 97%. And that's what a agile, automated supply chain should do. It should automatically show you exactly what a system will do in terms of mixing or recalibrating your supply chain or inventory within. And of course, remember, you should have the ability to look at high level, as I said, look at various locations, consider redistribution, and so forth. It's going to show you your stock turns, but this is what I love. I love the ability to see what am I going to sell exactly per month, so that I know that my budget, this aligns to budget. Because so many people will have a demand planning team working on a budget of X, and a sales team working on a budget of Y, and finance working on a different budget, and marketing working on a different budget. Everyone here can have a nice visual of what we're working towards. It will show you recommended orders. So imagine being able to sit with your supplier finally and saying, this is what my pipeline looks like over the next 12 months. Let's start discussing price breaks. From a production perspective, let's understand if we need to increase capacity on lines, yay or nay. Do we need to start working with maybe shipping lines and saying, oh, we're going to have a really nice increase in X month. Can we get better rates for our containers? Can we maybe get better rates with our 3PLs because we can secure pallet locations? Do we need to increase staff in our warehouse or increase possible equipment in our facilities, scanners and so forth? So a system, without a doubt, should be able to give you a really nice view. And in fact, we can have an extended horizon to show this at 24 months into the future. So now we've spoken about we need a cloud-based environment that is very flexible, that if a supplier comes to you tomorrow and says, I'm changing my lead time from 12 days to 180 days, that you can firstly understand what ramifications that will have, because you can quickly go in, you can set a policy to say, please will you change, I've worked off an extreme, but please will you change the lead time to X. Our system will recalibrate based on that, tell you what you would need to order very quickly based on that change and what the financial ramifications will be, so that if you need to start sourcing other points of supply, you can do that. So we're going to also provide you with the ability to have efficient ordering, as I said. So our system will show you what your stock looks like, what you need to order, what does your future forecast look like? It's very simple to use, and we're able to generally save about 70 to 80% of your inventory planner's time, or whoever it is that's planning your inventory. And remember, we spoke about that CEO. Imagine being able to free up that CEO's time. He should not be doing this, or he or she should not be doing this. They, without a doubt, should be focusing on strategic aspects. What product ranges are best for my business? How do I increase my market? Because now I've got better fill rates and I've got a higher competitive advantage. We spoke about automation. There absolutely has to be automation in this. We spoke about reducing stockouts. So we reduce generally stockouts to about 15%. Excess stock, we normally take out about, I say conservatively 15%, but can go up to 35% of your working capital. And of course, we're going to improve forecasting accuracy. And by improving forecasting accuracy, we're reducing the amount of unnecessary excess buys, we're reducing the excess stock, we're improving fill rates. So you can see that by targeting inventory, you really are creating a a optimization framework for everything else. Because when you start now understanding how many warehouses I need, where do I need those warehouses, you should be able to very quickly have a plug into a system for a new warehouse, and your system should be able to tell you what you need to stock there, where you need to stock it. We've got excess in this location. We've got surplus. We've got a stock out in that location. Please, will you redistribute? All this should be done very quickly within a system. So what I want to do now is I'd really like to open it up to questions and answers, because for me, this is where we get insight into what your pain points are, because we've spoken to you about some very prevalent points, and I'd like to ask, open the floor and ask if anyone finds that they need more automation. I mean, when we talk about AI, we've got a phenomenal AI engine that will actually say to you, please note this product in this location is in excess, please cancel this order. So it's very targeted. Do you use AI at all in your current structures?
Thanks, Carrie. It's a very informative presentation. Yeah, as you say, if anyone does have questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll have a few minutes now to answer them. A couple of things that was interesting to me, obviously it seems to be two aspects to it. There's having the data and then how you interpret the data, which I can see that the system can do a lot to help you interpret that data. One question that does come up a bit is, if we have an ERP system, why wouldn't we use the ERP system versus using Netstock for helping us with our replenishment? Maybe you could talk to that for a...
Absolutely. So once again, been very fortunate from a pure independent perspective to see multiple different systems out there. And let me tell you, there are some really solid programs available. So the key in a system is, number one, is that system's key functionality to solving your issue? And what we found with a lot of ERP offerings is they're more broad spectrum. They're not inventory specialists. So we've got a lot of clients that, I would probably say a good 50% of our clients could use their current ERP systems profile, but don't, because our forecasting algorithms are much stronger. So we've got more forecasting algorithms available. ERPs don't use that IP that we use around risk. They'll have more broad spectrum. Please keep 3 months. Please keep 1 month. Please just keep a min-max level. We really understand where you should be keeping the safety stock. And that's why we're able to release between 15 to 35% of working capital and increase fill rates at the same time, because our forecasting algorithms are better. And I say better as in more sophisticated. Our risk profiles are there, which the ERP system's not doing. And the ERP system really only looks at history and really focuses on history. We're providing clarity as to what does your future projection look like? What policies should we be able to mold to get to a point in time that we are hitting the correct fill rate percentage for your business, that we are reducing excess. We give you visibility, as I said, into those nice classifications that your ERP systems don't. We've got the projection modules that the ERPs, some have a very rough view, but they don't have, as I said, the algorithms to support that. We've got the AI that they don't have, of course. We've got the ability to pull out a whole lot more reporting functionality than, unfortunately, ERPs can do. So even though there's a place for an ERP's demand and supply planning function, they just don't have the level of sophistication we do. And we've got those tangible savings, Jeff, as well. And just one more thing I'd like to add to that, because it's a question that often people ask me, is yes, as I said, our system, I believe in our system. When I was in independent consulting, I used to implement Netstock because I thought it was a solid system. But the gold of Netstock is our onboarding team. So we make sure that the system is entrenched within your operation, that we understand your business, we build those policies around your business, and you'd be surprised how important that is. We need to understand that you've got certain units of measure, certain minimum order quantities you've got to adhere to. We understand that the competition in your market's different to other industries, and we build in all of these principles into your suggested, into your platform, so your suggested order makes sense. And we're going to hand you a fairly complex or comprehensive set of what to do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So it's one thing having an ERP system, but more often than not, people say, I don't even use it because I don't know how to use it. So our onboarding process is gold. We've got training available for you free of charge online. We've got a support system available for you online. Once again, most of our support is, answered within 10 to 15 minutes via, as I said, our online platform.
That's interesting, very helpful. So what you're saying is that while an ERP can do it to some extent, if you're really serious about it, that's when we would look at a system like this where you actually specialize in it and can go the next step, which is awesome. I mean, to me, stock could really be a strategic advantage in a business if you were able to use these insights properly and really help you to corner a market. So it could be quite powerful. And what you were saying before about those significant time savings, I think, is key as well.
So because I've come out of a distressed consulting background, I can tell you upfront that I saw very healthy businesses go into administration within a couple of years. And not talking COVID, we're just talking about not investing back in the business, not having, the ability to be agile to changes in market. But there were three fundamental points that in every business brought down a business: management, and strategy and the dissemination of strategy downwards so that everyone was on the same page. Number two is not managing your debtors correctly, and making sure that you've got decent cash flows. And number three was always inventory. And as I said, we're talking about one of the highest value items on your balance sheet. So not to invest in that. I mean, even if I'm biased towards investing in it, but just from a Logiq perspective, you've got to.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Oh, that's good. I think we're about on time, so we should be wrapping up. But we've got a special offer, haven't we, for anyone that's on this call?
Absolutely. So please don't hesitate to put in the chat function if you want me to set up a session with you. You can ask whatever you need. We can show you Netstock in more detail. But what we are offering this particular webinar's attendees is a 50% discount on our implementation fee if you book a demo. So you don't have to agree to anything. It's just booking a demo before the 31st of December. Now, what we're very proud of at Netstock is we offer a licensing fee. So it's a SaaS-based model. You pay monthly. And if you aren't happy after signing for a year, you can go on a month to month. And that's why we are incredibly invested in making sure that our system is entrenched and adding value to your business. And when I say entrenched, it means people are comfortable with the output. They're comfortable with the process. So our retention rates are incredible. But apart from that, we do have a once-off onboarding and training fee. And that's what we're offering a 50% discount on today. So Jeff and Jeremy, we love working with your team. You are so fantastic. We believe that we as a system add or are aligned with your value, which is making sure that your client gets what they need to satisfy their concerns, to make them competitive in the market, making sure that agility is there, making sure that they've, as I said, that they flourish in these very crazy, these crazy uncertain times. And we support that. That's what we've always been proud to do, is providing a platform. It's really easy to use, understanding what your inventory looks like, providing you with insights into, I say, the art of the possible, and providing you with a suggestion in terms of what you should order and what you should transfer.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Carrie. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your insights. We trust it was interesting and of use to our audience. As you can see, our email's on the screen there. If you want to get in touch with us, just flick us an email to contact@logiqgroup.nz. Love to hear from you. And we have that very generous offer on the screen there, 50% discount on the implementation fee. So get in touch. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you.